let's set the record straight. I don't hate Wendigo. Wow, it feels like I've said that before. Supernatural's opening season is made up primarily of these Monster of the Week episodes that tell individual stories that feel like short horror movies. It's a great way to go, and it's a pretty cool successor show to something like The X-Files. These episodes were meant to highlight myths and urban legends. The first one even focuses on the spirit of La Llorona, the woman in white. And the second episode, the topic of today's video, focuses on the Wendigo. Wendigo is a mythological creature or evil spirit originating from Algonquin folklore. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in literature and other works of art, such as social commentary and horror fiction. So that sounds like a perfect and fantastic idea for a Supernatural episode. So what went wrong? Look, Sam and Dean are great in this. They're about as good as they were in the pilot, if not for a little underwritten compared to that episode. But the point where this one falls apart for me is its supporting cast. I know that this is a standalone episode of the show, and it's not going to have the most memorable people, but my goodness, I cannot tell you a single thing about any character here. And that's not true for the rest of the season. I mean, look at the immediate next episode, Dead in the Water, and you can probably remember so much about Andrea or Lucas or even the sheriff, and of course the little town that they're in. How about Phantom Traveler or Bloody Mary, and of course Skin? The casts of these episodes are so much more fleshed out, interesting, and they actually add to the overall story. Roy is probably the lamest character that the show has put out in his first season. All he does is sit around with his big gun, think he's tough shit, and of course, he's just there to die. Haley and Ben feel entirely superfluous too. Look, I like the idea of Sam and Dean stumbling onto a case, and I think it's cool how they do it out of the goodness of their heart, but I just can't get invested in either Haley or Ben or their stupid brother. They're too wooden and one note, and they feel nothing like actually fleshed out characters, and more like plot devices to push the episode forward. It's like the story is driving the characters and not the characters driving the story. You can compare this directly to Dead in the Water. Everything that goes on between Sam, Dean, and Andrea is important to the story, and you actually feel for the characters involved. When Lucas is pulled into the lake and nearly drowns, it's impactful when Dean saves him because these characters, over the episode, feel meaningful. They push the episode forward. Another great example, this time for Sam and Dean as characters, is Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary comes after people who have secrets, and Sam is holding a really big one, and the fact that he knew Jessica was going to die. It creates tension and it builds the character work in the episode, wrapping it all up nicely. There's nothing like that here, and absolutely no resonance. And there should be. This is the episode directly after Sam loses Jessica. He should be grief-stricken, and again, they feel underwritten. The episode highlights some great strengths, I will admit. I like how Dean is able to finesse information out of the park ranger on a dime, and I think that's cool, but Sam oftentimes falls into his more whiny caricature of himself. And again, I understand, like I said, Jessica just died, but it feels so half-baked. It's like they never go the full mile. If he's so grief-stricken that he's angry at everything, then they should fully go into that. Instead, he just sort of flips back around to being whatever in a normal character later on. There's a lot of cool moments where they develop the storyline and decide to go hunt things and save people. It's an iconic moment, but it's not anything that interesting. Contrast that with the character work for them in, say, Bloody Mary, like I said, or even Skin. It's not so much an issue with this episode as it is just the rest of the episode does a far better job with the characters. And now, I feel like we gotta talk about Now, I know, I said the Wendigo should be a perfect match for Supernatural. Unfortunately, that's just not what ended up happening. Let's once again take a look at other characters in the show's opening run of episodes. The Woman in White is a clear showcase of a very strong monster. She hunts men who are cheating, which is already a very interesting concept. She's very recognizable and leaves a lasting impression on the viewers, to the fact where she's even brought back in the final season. You can argue maybe that if the Wendigo was the first monster in the show, he would have been brought back for the final season, but I don't really agree because look, they brought back Bloody Mary, right? They didn't bring back Wendigo. Even the Hookman has a better and larger presence in his episode than the Wendigo. And it's a shame because it's such a rich monster to play with, and I hate that it's just utterly boiled down to something so stupid and dumb. A lot of that has to do with its misused setting. Look, I think it's pretty cool to send an entire episode of the show essentially in a forest, but you know what else that is? It's pretty boring. The forest isn't interesting. I think it should be a character itself. The monster should feel like it's always around, creeping through it, utilizing the forest as an extension of his own wrath, and instead it's just really flat and dull. There's no sound design, there's no usage of it that evokes anything. I mean, we can once again look at Dead in the Water, an episode that really evokes that fear of drowning and creates a connection with the viewer through that setting. And lastly, the biggest problem with the monster is it just looks really bad. Look, I get it. There's the thought, don't show the monster. And in Supernatural, I often agree. But if you're going to show the monster, do something else than this. For something so talked about and so menacing, the design is so painfully dull and difficult to take seriously. This show thrives on practical effects and smart lighting, and I feel like there's very little of that anywhere here. The climax is anything but scary, and it just feels like a complete drop-off because of that. The monster sucks. And look, at the very end of the day, despite everything that I've said, I don't think this episode is bad. It's fairly solid in some ways. It's got some decent shots to it. It's got that classic season 1 flair that I really respect and love the look of, and it's well written without any major issues in its plotting. I just don't really understand what makes this episode so much better for people than other opening season 1 episodes. I literally have continued to get several comments on my original retrospective episode about how they love this episode, how strong it is, and how weird I am to dislike it. And I understand that for something like Ghostfacers, but not Wendigo. It's got a lot of cool ideas that never feel as fleshed out as they could be. It misuses its setting, it misuses its monster, and it misuses its cast. It creates what is an utterly forgettable second episode of the show, and that's ultimately not terrible, and I'd still pick this over several of the slimy and completely devoid of any intrigue Monster of the Week episodes in the later seasons. This one at least felt like it tried. It just didn't try hard enough for me.